There's a moment, a silent, almost imperceptible fraction of a second, when someone throws an accusation at you. It might be a subtle jab, a cutting remark, or a direct challenge to your character, your intentions, or your very worth. In that instant, an almost involuntary reflex kicks in for most people, a deep-seated urge to defend themselves. They feel compelled to explain, to clarify, to assure the other person they've been misunderstood, to set the record straight on why they didn't mean it or aren't like that. It seems like the reasonable, even honorable thing to do, an act of fairness and transparency. But what if I told you that in the brutal arena of power and influence, this instinct is not just a mistake, but a catastrophic surrender of your position? What if every single word you utter in defense actually solidifies your role as the weak one, the accused, playing a game you've already lost simply by showing up to their court? Niccolo Machiavelli, the Renaissance master of strategy, understood this cold truth better than anyone. The moment you explain yourself, you implicitly accept the premise of their attack, validating their authority to question you. You concede the frame of the conversation, stepping into the role of the defendant, and in doing so, you bleed your power dry, legitimizing their assault. The true masters of human dynamics don't stoop to explain. They operate on a different plane entirely, one where silence, reframing, and subtle psychological maneuvers instantly flip the script. This isn't about being passive or ignoring injustice. It's about refusing to be a pawn in a game designed to diminish you. It's about transforming your perceived vulnerability into an impenetrable shield, and then, if you choose, into a devastatingly effective sword. When you find yourself under scrutiny, facing criticism or direct attack, the conventional wisdom dictates that you must clarify, justify, or even counterattack directly. We've been conditioned since childhood to explain our actions, to prove our innocence, to ensure we are understood. This conditioning, while seemingly benign in personal relationships, becomes a fatal flaw in contexts where power dynamics are at play. Because in these moments, understanding is not the goal of your accuser. Their goal, whether consciously or subconsciously, is to assert dominance, to diminish your stature, and to control the narrative. By defending yourself, you unwittingly grant them that control, handing over the very leverage you desperately need to maintain. Imagine the subtle shift that occurs. You are accused of being arrogant. Your immediate thought is to list all the times you've been humble, to explain your confidence as a product of hard work, or to point out that it's just your direct communication style. But think about what this action communicates. It communicates that you care deeply about their perception, that their label has struck a nerve, and most critically, that their assessment holds enough weight to warrant your response. You validate their judgment by engaging with it. You prove that their words have power over you. And in the silent, often invisible calculus of social and professional interactions, this is a profound loss of standing. Machiavelli understood that power isn't about being universally liked or even always being morally right. It's about being perceived as unshakable, formidable, and in control. The person who rushes to defend themselves appears frantic, insecure, and subject to external validation. They resemble a cornered animal, flinching and scrambling for an escape. This is not the image of power. Instead, it's the image of someone who could be easily influenced, manipulated, and undermined. Every word spent on defense is a word that confirms you are playing their game on their terms, within their chosen frame. The brutal truth is that defending yourself rarely convinces anyone who is already predisposed to believe the accusation. Those who attack you are often doing so from a place of their own insecurity, envy, or desire to gain an advantage. They aren't seeking clarity. They are seeking your reaction. Your defense, rather than disarming them, often fuels their fire because it confirms their impact. It gives them the satisfaction of knowing they've hit their target. Moreover, for any neutral observers, your immediate, verbose explanation can ironically make you look guilty. Only the weak, the truly uncertain, rush to explain every facet of their being. The strong, by contrast, possess an intrinsic knowing that doesn't require external validation. They let the accusation float, untouched, because they understand the true battle is to control the frame, not for the specifics of the accusation itself. This battle for the frame is where Machiavelli's genius truly shines. He taught that whoever controls a frame controls the outcome. When someone accuses you, they are attempting to impose a frame upon you, a frame of guilt, inadequacy, or malice. If you step into that frame to defend yourself, you've accepted their terms. But what if you refuse to enter their frame at all? What if you simply exist outside of it, forcing them to confront the emptiness of their own attack? This is the essence of Machiavellian counter-strategy, turning the accusation into a mirror, reflecting their negativity back onto them. Make them doubt their own intentions, their own emotional stability, their own motives. Make them look obsessed, bitter, or unhinged, all without uttering a single word in your defense. Most people defend themselves because they genuinely want to be understood, to be seen for who they truly are. They harbor a belief that if they just explain enough, clarify enough, or repeat themselves enough, they will be vindicated and the misunderstanding will dissolve. This belief, while noble, stems from a place of emotional desire for connection and approval, not strategic acumen. In power dynamics, you don't want clarity from your accuser. You want control. Clarity is for intimate conversations with trusted allies. Control is for the public arena. And power, true, unassailable power, doesn't come from being understood or liked. It comes from being respected, feared, and perceived as utterly untouchable. So, when someone lobs a label at you, arrogant, cold, selfish, manipulative, and your immediate, conditioned response is, "No, you don't understand. Let me explain." You already lost significant ground. You've reacted. You've proven you care about their opinion. You've metaphorically handed them the ball, and now they're running with it, dictating the pace and direction of the interaction. And in doing so, you surrender one of the most potent Machiavellian assets you possess: mystery. Powerful individuals are often enigmatic. Their motives are not always clear, their reactions not always predictable. This mystery creates an aura of depth and potential danger, making others cautious. But the moment you feel compelled to explain yourself, you unravel that mystery, making yourself transparent and, thus, vulnerable. Think of the most powerful people you've ever encountered, not necessarily the loudest or the most charismatic, but the ones who commanded respect through sheer presence. They were often individuals who wielded silence like a finely honed weapon. They could make you second-guess your own certainty with a amazed stare, or their calm, unflinching demeanor in the face of provocation. Machiavelli understood this profoundly. He would tell you that he who explains submits, but he who remains silent, who refuses to engage in the verbal skirmish, forces others to fill in the blanks. And in that void of information, people often project their greatest fears and highest estimations, thus overestimating the silent one's power and depth. That is a true game. When you refuse to react, something uncomfortable yet powerful happens. The accuser, expecting a flurry of defenses, finds themselves speaking into a vacuum. They become disoriented. They start doubting their own words, their own perceived impact. They might even look around, subconsciously seeking validation from others, and often find none for their unprovoked attack against someone who remains unperturbed. Suddenly, their power, which depended entirely on your reaction, shrinks and dissipates. Meanwhile, your power expands, silently, effortlessly. You've done the one thing no emotional or attention-seeking person can handle. You've made them talk to themselves, made them responsible for the echo of their own negativity. And that, in its essence, is how you flip the power dynamic. You allow their accusation to simply die, a hollow sound in the echo chamber of its own weakness, never given the fuel of your energy or attention. Let's delve deeper into this phenomenon. Imagine you walk into a room, a professional networking event, a family gathering, a social dinner. Someone, perhaps subtly, perhaps directly, throws shade your way. It could be a snide remark about your recent success, a critique of your latest idea, or an ill-intentioned joke about your personality or past. All eyes turn, expecting your retort, your explanation, your visible discomfort. This is your moment. You'll move, say absolutely nothing. Not a word in defense, no clever retaliation, not even a sarcastic smirk. Just a calm, total stillness. Hold your gaze, perhaps a neutral expression, utterly unreadable. In that precise moment, you become untouchable. Everyone in the room is now forced to ask internal questions. Why didn't they react? Do they know something we don't? Are they truly above this petty squabble? Did that attack just make them appear stronger, more composed? You've not only flipped the script, but you've flipped the entire social frame. The attention shifts from the accusation to your profound, unnerving lack of response. And silence, when delivered with genuine presence and composure, speaks volumes louder than any frantic justification ever could. Machiavelli didn't just study political maneuverings. He was a profound observer of human psychology. He understood that power isn't merely about what you say or do, but crucially, about what people believe you could say or do, but choose not to. The unspoken, the unrevealed, holds far more weight than any transparent explanation. It creates an aura of mystery, depth, and latent strength that keeps adversaries guessing and allies intrigued. This strategic silence is not a void. It is a canvas upon which others project their own interpretations, often favorable to the silent, composed figure. Now, consider an even colder, more psychologically devastating move. Sometimes, you don't just ignore the accusation. You invert it entirely, turning the attacker's weapon against themselves. Someone calls you manipulative. Instead of denying it, instead of listing your ethical deeds, you smile, look past them, almost through them, and with an air of detached neutrality, simply say, if that's truly how you choose to see it. No defensiveness, no hint of apology, just a calm, almost philosophical acceptance of their flawed perception. What happens in that instant? They scramble. They were hoping for a fight, a visible squirm, a moment of weakness they could exploit. Instead, they are left holding their own weapon, their accusation now devoid of an intended target, dangling awkwardly in the air. This is where the psychological magic happens. Guilt and self-doubt begin to creep in on their asterisk side. They start wondering if they overstepped, if they misjudged, if they now look insecure, overly emotional, or even foolish for making such an unprompted, unreciprocated attack. And guess what? They do. You just took all the negative energy they threw at you and, with zero effort on your part, made them carry its weight. You made them own their negativity. There's a precise moment when silence becomes unbearable, not for you, the unreactive party, but for the one who expected a passionate response. That's when the tables turn irrevocably. They believe they were the formidable accuser. Now, through your strategic non-reaction, they are exposed as the one begging for attention, desperate for validation, revealing their own profound insecurity. And you have just become something infinitely more powerful than merely innocent. You become untouchable. Machiavelli grasped a fundamental truth that most individuals will never comprehend. Words, in the context of power, are not primarily designed to clarify truth, but often to obscure it. When someone attacks you, subtly or directly, they want you to engage with their fog, to drown you in a sea of emotional explanations. Because the more you explain, the more you elaborate, the less certain, the less formidable you appear. It's like wrestling with a ghost. The more you struggle, the more foolish you look, and the more real the ghost becomes in the eyes of onlookers. Instead, the Machiavellian strategy dictates, let them fill the silence. Let them speak into the void you created. What inevitably happens when you let them do all the talking in the absence of your defense? They overplay their hand. They repeat themselves, often with increasing desperation. They begin to look emotional, unstable, even obsessed. You, on the other hand, have said nothing, yet suddenly, they are the one under judgment. The crowd, or any observing party, isn't just listening to the specific word being uttered. They are watching the dynamic star. They are observing who is calm, composed, and unruffled, and who is rattled, agitated, and flailing. That is the essence of social power, and it doesn't spring from being demonstrably right. It emanates from being undeniably untouchable. Let's apply this to a specific scenario. You're in a high-stakes business meeting. A colleague, perhaps vying for your position or simply feeling threatened, subtly undermines you. They might say, I'm not sure that strategy is really thought through, like his usual bold ideas, or he always has these grand visions, don't you think? They deliver it with a disingenuous smile, looking for a reaction. They want you to bite, to leap to your strategy's defense, to justify your vision. What do most people instinctively do? They lean forward. They explain the intricacies of their plan. They try to prove its viability with data. They clarify their intentions. They get a nervous edge in their voice or posture. The entire room, consciously or unconsciously, picks up on this shift in energy. They smell the insecurity. But the Machiavellian operator, the one who truly understands power, does the exact opposite. They lean back, perhaps maintaining eye contact, perhaps allowing a moment of thoughtful silence, even a subtle, almost imperceptible smile playing on their lips. They wait. If they speak at all, it is not a defense, but a calm, decisive redirect. Interesting perspective. Given your concerns, perhaps you could share your alternative strategy, then, or simply, I hear your feedback. What precisely would you propose instead? Suddenly, the attacker is put on the spot. They have to perform. They are now under evaluation. The pressure is on them to deliver. The entire room flips its focus. Because silence, especially from a position of confidence, acts as an accusation without words. It makes people feel small, inadequate, or exposed, all without you having to lift a single finger in self-defense. In the realm of romantic or personal relationships, this dynamic can be even more emotionally charged and, therefore, even more dangerous if mishandled. Say your partner, in a moment of distress, lashes out with, "You don't care about me anymore." The average person's immediate reaction is panic. They launch into a torrent of explanations, reassurances, justifications of past actions, and promises for future changes. In doing so, they validate the emotional, accusatory frame their partner has presented. They step into the court of their partner's emotion and implicitly accept the burden of proof. The Machiavellian approach, however, is profoundly different. You don't dismiss their feelings, nor do you get into a heated argument. Instead, you allow the full weight of their accusation to hang in the air, creating a palpable silence. You observe them, letting them feel the reverberations of their own drama echoing in the space between you. Then, with a calm, grounded demeanor, you respond with something concise and devoid of explanation. "That's not how I see it." "Oh, I understand that's how you feel." Period. No further clarification, no immediate justification. What happens now? They are left feeling profoundly uncertain. They begin to question their own tone, their own choice of words, their own degree of reactivity. Because in that moment, you asserted control over the most crucial element, the emotional tempo of the interaction. And whoever controls the tempo, controls the frame. You've anchored yourself while their emotional storm rages, making them question the very foundations of their outburst. There's an even deeper tactic, one that is colder, yet remarkably effective in certain situations. When accused or attacked, don't just remain calm, strategically disappear. Someone insults you online, in a group chat, or even in a direct message. Your natural inclination might be to reply, to defend, to correct. Instead, you do nothing. You don't respond. You don't acknowledge the attack. Crucially, you don't block them either. You simply let your absence sit, a profound, unsettling mirror reflecting their own words back at them. You let them sit in the deafening silence of being utterly ignored, unacknowledged, and thus invalidated. This tactic has a devastating psychological effect, often breaking people in two distinct ways. First, they realize you didn't even deem them worthy of a response, a devastating blow to their ego and perceived importance. Second, they are left to spin internal narratives, desperately trying to understand your inaction. Most of the time, this internal spinning destroys their composure. Why? Because the average person thrives on emotional validation, even negative validation in the form of conflict. If you take that validation away, they begin to wither, they spiral. They might post more, reach out to others for validation, or try to bait a reply with increasingly desperate tactics. And with every new, unhinged attempt to provoke you, they look weaker, more obsessed, more emotionally unstable. All while you remain perfectly still, perfectly unbothered. That's when you win, not because you proved anything, but because they destroyed themselves trying to extract a reaction from you, a reaction that never came. Here's where the strategy reaches an elite level, moving beyond mere non-defense to active, subtle redirection of the attack. Instead of defending yourself when attacked, you subtly reframe their accusation so that it appears to be a sign of their weakness, their insecurity, or their limited perspective. Someone calls you arrogant. You might respond with a calm, almost contemplative tone. Strange, isn't it, how confidence makes some people so deeply uncomfortable? You haven't denied the accusation. You reframed it as a reflection of their discomfort with confidence, subtly implying their insecurity. Someone says you're manipulative. You could offer, it's often the people who can't influence others who are quickest to see manipulation everywhere. Again, you haven't defended your character. You've turned their accusation into a commentary on their own inability to persuade. Someone calls you fake. Your response might be, people often resort to that label when they realize they are no longer getting what they want from you. In each instance, you don't just deny the accusation. You pivot, making it about their underlying motivations or insecurities. And now, suddenly, they are the one scrambling, internally or externally, to defend their own statement, their own worldview, their own emotional state. This isn't just a reversal, it's a power judo throw. You've taken their emotional force, their very aggression, and used its momentum to send them tumbling into a public or private collapse. Machiavelli himself would refer to this as a turn of the blade. Do not meet the sword with a shield and parry. Instead, let the attacker fall upon his own blade, his own aggression becoming his undoing. The world relentlessly teaches us to defend our reputation, to explain our actions, to clear our name, to constantly prove our goodness. But Machiavelli, with his clear, unblinking gaze, so this is a profound trap. He understood that the moment you begin to chase innocence, you implicitly admit a potential for guilt. The very act of seeking vindication suggests there was something to be vindicated from. Therefore, the true strategist, the one who seeks to maintain or elevate their power, never plays that game. Instead, they cultivate an aura of being too composed to be shaken, too elevated to care about petty attacks, too utterly clear on their own position to ever feel the need to explain it to lesser minds. And gradually, insidiously, those who try to tear them down start to look unstable, reactive, deeply jealous, and fundamentally weak. Because the more you defend yourself, the more it truly looks like you need to. But the more you calmly ignore or subtly deflect, the more dangerous, the more formidable they assume you are. And that powerful, unspoken assumption is precisely where true, lasting power is born. Most individuals mistakenly equate power with proving themselves, proving they are right, proving they are not what others accuse them of being, proving they are somehow superior to a negative perception. But Machiavelli, were he observing this, would offer a sardonic smirk. Because the precise second you attempt to prove anything in response to an accusation, you have already, by your engagement, declared the other person's judgment to be valid enough to warrant your attention. And when you hand someone that kind of validation, you effectively hand them the leash to your emotional and social control. You allow them to dictate the terms of your existence. Let's place this in a group dynamic, perhaps a casual social gathering, a dinner table, or even a team meeting. Someone throws a public jab. Oh, he always acts like he knows everything. Or, I guess being humble isn't really your thing, is it? What is a default, conditioned response for most? They tense up. They might try to laugh it off unconvincingly. Or, far worse, they respond with an immediate, flustered explanation, attempting to smooth over the situation, thinking they are saving face. But what they are actually accomplishing is confirming that the jab landed, confirming its impact. Now, everyone in the room isn't just observing the original jab. They are watching your defense, and that act alone lends credence to the initial attack, making it seem true simply because you felt the need to address it. Here's what the Machiavellian operator does instead. They pause. They hold silence, not for an awkward eternity, but for a deliberate 2 to 3 seconds. They scan the room, not with aggression, but with a quiet, almost amused attachment. Their gaze is steady, unblinking. Then, and only if a response feels strategically necessary, they offer something calm, exquisitely precise, and dismissive. Perhaps a simple, "You seem particularly emotional today." Or a neutral, interesting take. Or, most powerfully, nothing at all, just a prolonged, still gaze that communicates an unflappable presence. What unfolds next is often predictable. The attacker shifts uncomfortably. They fidget. They might glance around for backup that isn't readily offered. They might even try to explain their joke or soften their comment, feeling the heat of the room's gaze now shifting onto them. because your profound lack of reaction just communicated something far louder than any words ever could. You asterisk are not the one under judgment. They are. In the fast-paced, often brutal digital arena, these dynamics escalate with dizzying speed. Comments, posts, call-outs, direct messages, a constant barrage of people attempting to bait you into reacting, into engaging with their negativity. Here's the truth Machiavelli would etch into your mind regarding the online world. In the court of public opinion, silence often speaks of guilt, unless your silence is so deliberate, so profound, that it commands fear and respect. So, the tactic here is adapted. When attacked online, do not defend. Do not explain. Instead, distort. You don't directly address the claim. You redirect the energy, not back to the individual accuser, but back into the broader context, subtly reframing the accusation itself into a badge of your own power. For example, someone publicly calls you toxic or manipulative in a comment section. Instead of posting a lengthy, tearful defense or a detailed clarification of your character, you post a short, sharp statement that reframes the entire scenario. Something like, "It's always fascinating how easily people label you dangerous when they realize they can't control you." What just happened? You didn't defend the accusation. You didn't validate their premise. You reframed the very accusation into an affirmation of your own autonomy and strength. Now, they appear bitter and resentful because they cannot control you. You appear unfazed, perhaps even a little amused by their transparent attempts. And the audience, observing this exchange, begins to question who is truly in control, who is truly the aggressor, and who possesses the undeniable power. That's not damage control, that's narrative dominance. Let's get even more surgical with the tools you can deploy instead of defending yourself. There are 3 primary Machiavellian instruments at your disposal. Silence, which is your default, cold, and immensely powerful, leaving your accuser exposed and disoriented. Deflection, where you reframe the narrative or shift the focus without ever directly acknowledging or engaging with the jab. And finally, precision cuts, short, sharp truths or observations that immediately end the game by exposing the attacker's underlying weakness or motive. Consider these examples of precision cuts, which are not defenses, but status assertions. Someone says, "You're full of yourself." Your calm, unruffled response. Confidence often upsets the insecure. They say, "You're fake." Your response, delivered with an air of complete indifference, "I don't owe you authenticity." They declare, "You think you're better than everyone." Your reply, a slight, almost imperceptible tilt of the head. "No, I just don't think like everyone." These are not attempts to clear your name or prove your innocence. They don't say, "I am not guilty." Instead, they powerfully communicate, "You cannot touch me. Your words hold no sway over my self-perception." And that, at its core, is a Machiavellian secret. The true strategist never begs to be seen as good, or kind, or agreeable. Instead, they implicitly dare people to see them as bad, or difficult, or unconventional, and then walk taller for it, their power undiminished by external judgment. When you consistently refuse to defend yourself, a strange and deeply unsettling phenomenon begins to occur within your enemies, or anyone attempting to undermine you. They become increasingly unhinged. They expected a battle, a verbal wrestling match, and instead, they find themselves swinging at smoke at an opponent who simply isn't there to engage. This lack of engagement, this absence of the expected reaction, frustrates them immensely. They start escalating their attacks, pushing harder, becoming more dramatic, more aggressive, or more emotionally expressive. And in doing so, they inadvertently expose more of their own insecurity, their own desperation, their own lack of composure. The more they flail, the more visibly unhinged they become. The more you, by contrast, rise in the eyes of any neutral observers. Why? Because you allowed them to perform their own collapse, to visibly unravel under pressure of your unwavering calm. That is a Machiavellian endgame. You don't necessarily set out to destroy your enemies. You simply let their obsession with you, their desperate need for your reaction, ultimately destroy them star. Many people operate under the illusion that being misunderstood is a dangerous state, something to be avoided at all costs. But Machiavelli understood that being predictable is far, far worse. The misunderstood man, especially one who embraces his enigmatic quality, possesses a certain mystery. This mystery makes him difficult to categorize, difficult to anticipate, and therefore difficult to manipulate. The predictable man, on the other hand, is an open book, his reactions easily foreseen, his vulnerabilities readily exploited. People who are constantly striving to clear things up, to ensure every aspect of their being is understood, are often perceived as desperate for approval, lacking an inner core certainty. But those who remain calmly misunderstood, who are unbothered by external judgments and simply proceed with their chosen path, they are often feared, or at the very least, treated with extreme caution. Machiavelli famously advised, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." But even more subtly, he implied that it is better to be confusing and unpredictable than to be transparent and easily anticipated. Because a confused observer is cautious, he watches you intently, refraining from rash actions. And in that cautious observation, you control the field, simply by existing as an enigma. Let's dismantle one final, pervasive illusion, the belief that you need a good reputation to win. What you truly need, according to Machiavelli, is an strong reputation. The man with a good reputation is expected to be clean, soft, agreeable, and always cooperative. He is predictable, and his virtue can be exploited. But the man with an strong reputation, he might not always be liked. He might not always be trusted in a conventional sense. But critically, no one dares to move against him casually or without profound consideration. That is precisely what happens when you consistently refuse to defend yourself. Your reputation ceases to be about what people believe to be true about you, and instead becomes about what they fear you will do next, or rather, what they fear your inaction might represent. That's how you fundamentally flip the power dynamic. You stop fighting for approval, for clarity, for vindication, and instead, you begin to cultivate an aura, a presence, that compels people to be cautious, to be respectful, to be wary. Because even your silence in their presence begins to feel like a deliberate decision, a calculated move. And every strategic non-move you make becomes a significant move in their anxious minds. The final evolution in this Machiavellian art is not merely silence, but the cultivation of an aura, a profound and undeniable presence that emanates composure, security, and an almost transcendent detachment from the petty noise of the world. It's a presence so robust, so utterly self-contained, that accusations simply evaporate before they even have a chance to land. They bounce off an invisible shield of self-possession. And this doesn't come from being emotionless or robotic. It comes from being unbothered by design star. Because once you have rigorously trained yourself not to defend, not to explain, not to seek external validation for your existence, you cross a critical threshold. You arrive at a point where your very being, your steadfast and unshakable presence, becomes your defense. And in that profound state, power becomes not a struggle, but an effortless emanation. Think about the rare individuals in life who genuinely never explain themselves. They don't engage in long online rants. They don't correct every misinterpretation in the media. They don't get into protracted arguments with critics. And yet, paradoxically, people respect them more, not less. Why? Because silence, especially in the face of accusation or scrutiny, creates myth. It invites interpretation, speculation, and projection. And the human mind, when left without a ready, simple explanation, instinctively fills that void with strength, with depth, with something unknowable and therefore powerful. People assume you must be dangerous. They assume you must possess secret knowledge. They assume you must be so utterly secure in who you are that you don't even blink when challenged. And that potent, unspoken assumption, that perceived inner fortress, is what makes people follow you, fear you, and ultimately defer to you. Machiavelli didn't care about being perceived as good. He cared about being in control. And the one who never defends himself is always in control of perception, even when surrounded by a cacophony of lies and misrepresentations. Here's a profound paradox of this approach. The more vigorously you explain yourself, the more alone you ultimately appear. Because when you're already arguing passionately on your own behalf, no one else feels a need to step in and defend you. You've taken on the entire burden yourself. But if you remain calmly detached, if you stand silent and unfazed in the face of an attack, something incredible happens. People start to feel an almost irresistible urge to defend **you star. They begin to voice what you refuse to say. That was completely uncalled for. He didn't deserve that. Why are you coming after him? He didn't even respond, and you're still pushing. Suddenly, the crowd, or individual observers, become your spontaneous shield, your unwitting advocates. And what could possibly be more powerful, more Machiavellian, than defending yourself, allowing others to do it for you without even needing to ask? That is true leverage, a strategic masterpiece. You let the world argue your case, or at least challenge your accuser, while you remain elevated, above the fray, unburdened by the emotional labor of self-justification. Now you're not just respected, you're elevated, almost reverentially so. This level of mastery doesn't happen overnight. It's built like a fortress, stone by deliberate stone. It's cultivated by consistently choosing restraint over reaction, stillness over fluster, and profound silence over impulsive explanation. You start with small, deliberate acts of non-defense. Never correct insults that are clearly designed to provoke a reaction. Let them speak. Let their venom echo into the void you provide. Your unflustered silence, your unblinking gaze, subtly communicates to everyone present that the insult didn't even register on your radar, that it was beneath your notice. When faced with indirect shots or veiled criticisms, respond with calm confusion, not offense. A simple, "Is that truly how you perceive it?" delivered with utter serenity, utterly dismantles the emotional energy behind their attack, forcing them to own their subjective perception. Integrate short, decisive closing phrases instead of lengthy defenses. When challenged, a calm, noted, an even-keeled "okay," a dismissive "think what you like," or a resonant "time will tell," each serve to close the door on further debate. It doesn't invite more argument. It ends the scene, a final period on a sentence you refuse to continue. Furthermore, meticulously study and control your nonverbal communication, how you hold your face, your body posture, your unwavering gaze. The Machiavellian operator never twitches, never flinches, never tenses up. Stillness, physical and emotional, is their most formidable armor. And the more still, the more unreactive you remain when others lose their composure and spiral, the more your power expands, silently, imperceptibly. When people don't know how to provoke you, when they cannot crack your composed exterior, they begin to fear you, not because you are erratic, but because you are unreadable. You become a mirror that reflects their own instability and emotional volatility back at them, an unnerving enigma. Machiavelli would assert that the most dangerous man is not the one who attacks first. It is the one who never needs to. You will eventually reach a point where the attacks, the accusations, the subtle undermining attempts simply stop. Not because you fought them off or defeated every single one, but because people instinctively understand they will lose before they even begin. Your very presence, your aura, silently declares, "I don't play defense. I let others exhaust themselves and ultimately destroy themselves in their futile attempts to reach me." There exists a crucial difference between May's strength and true immunity. Strength, even immense strength, can still flinch. It can still react, still experience a flicker of emotion, even if it ultimately fights back and wins. But immunity doesn't even acknowledge the hit. It's as if the blow passes through it without friction, without impact, leaving the immune entity utterly undisturbed. That is the Machiavellian ideal. You don't win the argument in the conventional sense. You end the argument before it even properly begins, by never needing to answer it, by rendering the very premise of their attack irrelevant to your self-contained power. Because when you no longer defend yourself, when you utterly abandon the need to explain or justify, people stop seeing you as someone who needs to be put on trial, who needs external validation or judgment. You're simply not on their level anymore. You've moved beyond the transient, often fickle court of public approval. And the only judgment that truly matters, the only court whose verdict holds weight, is your own internal one. From this profound point onward, you no longer live in defense. You live in definition. You define your image. You define your tone. You define your silence and the potent implications it carries. And people feel that. They feel the unshakable certainty behind your eyes, the imperturbable calmness in your posture, and the subtle, underlying danger in your quiet. You're not resisting any longer. You're commanding. And that's precisely when the entire room shifts around you. The crowd speaks less, your hesitant enemies grow quieter, and your name begins to carry an undeniable, weighty gravitas. Not because you fought fiercely for it, but because you never once felt the need to explain it. Never defending yourself doesn't mean never speaking. It means speaking only when it strategically shifts the power dynamic in your favor, when your words feel like a deliberate, calculated move, not a desperate, reactive response. Because every single time you choose not to explain yourself, every time you hold perfectly still while the rest of the world spins in a frenzy of justification, you become the one thing they can never truly control. This journey isn't just about winning arguments. It's about reclaiming your autonomy, mastering your emotional responses, and projecting an aura of unshakable confidence that compels respect. Embrace the power of the unsaid, the strength in stillness, and the control in quiet confidence. Let your actions, or your deliberate inaction, speak for themselves. If you're ready to truly master the intricate dance of power and transform the way you navigate conflict, then this Machiavellian insight is just the beginning. Hit that like button if this perspective resonates. Subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into strategy and human psychology, and leave a comment below sharing your thoughts on how you've seen this play out in your own life, or what your initial reaction is to this radical idea. And remember this, the most powerful statement you can ever make is often the one you choose not to utter.